Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the NRW. I'm your host, Rob Medina, and I thank you all very much for joining me here today because today I'm going to be reviewing the movie Lights Out. Now, our very own Kuya P had actually interviewed the director of this movie in Christian Sesma here on the channel, and I recommend you guys do check out the interview because Christian does go into details about what it took to make the film, his excitement for the movie, and this movie actually came out last week on February 16th, and I have been very excited to check out this movie for a number of different reasons here. The first of which actually is because Christian Sesma actually directed a film that I did a review here on the channel called Section 8 that came out back in 2022. I had a lot of fun with that movie. That was a great movie. I bought that film as well too on DVD, and I really thoroughly enjoyed everything about the film. It was just an enjoyable throwback to the old school 80s and action 90s films that I grew up watching, and this film is no different when it comes to that as well too. But the other thing I was also very excited about this movie has to do with the fact that the screenwriters in this film are screenwriters that I'm massive fans of, in Chad Law and also Gary Charles. Now, both Chad Law and Gary Charles had written a film together called The Get Back, which is a Tubi original film that came out last year, which I also did a review here on the channel. And I loved that movie. I really enjoyed that film. And I've actually had a chance to talk to Gary Charles here on the show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, on this channel. And that was a great conversation I had with him. He really went in depth with me about his lead up to that project, among other things as well, too. Really worth checking out if you haven't done so already. And one of the things that I was really excited about this movie, too, is because I loved what they had done so much in The Get Back, I was really curious to see if they would still have that same momentum that they got from that movie into this film as well too. And I can wholeheartedly say that they have done a great job with this movie. They really do work well together when it comes to the screenwriting capacity here. And I'll get into the reason as far as why I think that. But the other thing, of course, I'm very excited about this movie too, is because of the fact that Scott Adkins is in this movie. Now, everyone knows, as many reviews I've done of this movie, especially with the action genre, Scott Adkins is one of my favorite action actors of all time. He's like one of the top 5, no doubt in my mind. And even though he's not in the movie for that much, by the time he's in the film, he is used very effectively, which I will also get into this movie as well, in this review I'm going to say. So there's a lot about this film that I really did enjoy, that I had a lot of fun with here. I'll be the first to admit, though, it's not a perfect film by any means. There are some issues that I did have with the movie, but the issues that I had with the film, which I'll point out in my negatives here, never really took away my enjoyment from the movie. In fact, it was one of those things where I was able to look over it very easily. But again, this is a movie that I understand that some people will probably look at and see all the familiar tropes we've seen before. This is nothing that's new as far as what is being offered in terms of storytelling. And I do agree that's the case here, but I was still entertained at the end of the day. I was still very invested with the story, with the characters especially. And I had a lot of fun at the end of the day. So for me, that's all I really cared about. So I'm really excited to talk about this movie at great length here. So I will get into the plot synopsis here. I may get into a little bit of spoilers here because, look, I'll be honest. This movie, when I saw from the very beginning, I already knew what the outcome was going to be. But there were some genuine surprises here and there that I appreciated along the way. It's not like any sort of Sixth Sense ending by any means. It's just that I appreciated the twists and turns as terms of like character development is concerned, character investment, and the emotions that they go through, and various other things as well too, that I thought worked quite well in this movie. So I might go into some part of the story here that might be in a spoiler territory, but the way I see it is that I'll be honest, because the film's already out now, and if you've seen a lot of action movies, you can tell what the beats are going to be coming here, and this is no different when it comes to that. So I still think that the story is strong enough and it's still entertaining enough that if I reveal a few things along the way, that it's not going to ruin it for you, because when you watch it, I'm hoping you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, if not more. So I'll get into the plot synopsis, and of course I'll get into my positives, my negatives, and then my rating. A drifting ex-soldier turns into an underground fighter with the help of a just-released ex-con, pitting them both against corrupt cops, hired killers, gunning for them, and those they care about. And that right there is the film in a nutshell. So now let's get into my positives. My first positive with this movie really has to do with the characters that we're following in this film, because I'll be the first to admit that I like Frank Grillo. I think Frank Grillo is a great actor. I really enjoy his work. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. But there are some films he's done that I think are just incredible. Like The Grey is a great example. Like when you watch that movie, that's a great movie, but he was really good in that film. So that movie is kind of what made me really realize to look out for Frank Grillo as an actor. And then as the years have gone by, he's been a part of major projects along the way too. End of Watch, what else? of course, Captain America, the Winter Soldier in Civil War. He had a cameo in Avengers Endgame as well, too. And he's worked on several other projects as well that he's just really good at what he does. And for me, when I saw him being the lead in this movie, I was excited for it, but what I was really excited for is to see him work alongside with Scott Adkins. And again, Scott Adkins is not in this movie very much, but the time he is in the film, he really does complement Frank Grillo's character in this movie. The character that Frank Grillo plays is a character by the name of Duffy. So there was just a lot of wonderful investment that I had with the story because of the characters. And then the other thing I also want to point out too has to do with Mekhi Phifer. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of Mekhi Phifer, but I'm not also saying that I don't like him either. It's not that. It's just that I've always appreciated Mekhi Phifer's acting, and I think he's a really good actor as well too. I mean, if you've seen his work on ER, he was phenomenal in that show. I loved him in 8 Mile, and I really, really loved his work in the remake of Dawn of the Dead. I thought he was so good in that movie. Like, I really love that character arc that his character goes through in that film. And like I said before, I really do appreciate Mekhi Phifer as an actor, but I will be honest and say that when I saw that he was involved with this movie, I just was not sure what he would be able to contribute. And this is not to be a negative by any means. I'm not saying that I don't think he was capable of doing anything good. That's not what I'm implying here. But I just was really curious to see how he would handle himself in a film of this sort in terms of the action is concerned and the other actors he's working with as well too, like how he would complement with the story and the other actors he's working with. And I really loved what he had done in this movie, because I would say that his character is really the main motivation for Frank Grillo's character in Duffy, because one of the things that you get to learn in this movie about Frank Grillo's character in Duffy is that you learn right away that he's a veteran and that he's coming back home from being overseas after a number of years, and that he's kind of get back into the swing of things. But you can tell this guy has a lot of pent up rage, a lot of aggression that he needs to find a way to get an outlet, I should say. And Mekhi Phifer, when he comes across him for the first time in the beginning of the movie, he notices that right away, due to the fact that his own brother was also a veteran as well too. And he reveals in the story that my brother killed himself. Like he needed an outlet, and the one way he took himself out was by killing himself. And he's like, and I see that in you, and I think I can help you. So he basically convinces him to take upon an opportunity to fight for money. And then when he realizes he could fight and beat the shit out of these guys quickly, he realizes that, hey, we're going to go to his other place that we can earn a lot more money, where the fights are much better. It's not going to be in some like truck stop. It's going to be in a pretty well-established environment, more or less. And there's going to be some potential of us earning a lot of money in the process here. So sort of reluctantly, Duffy does agree to go with that. But the reason I'm pointing about Mekhi Phifer specifically is with the information I just got into here is because he is the motivation for Duffy, the character that Frank Grillo plays, where you got to see that they do form a friendship. And although the story kind of moves rather quickly, and that's not a negative on the story or on the film, I have to say, by any means, just that it moves rather quickly. So when I saw how fast things were going, there was a concern for me, wondering that, you know, are we going to be able to connect with the characters in this capacity, where you really get to see that the friendship that they're developing along the way, that it's a very well earned friendship, and that the care that Duffy develops for his, Max, played by Mekhi Phifer, and his family with his sister and his niece, is it a well earned emotion for me as an audience member to be invested with. And I think that's one thing that Mekhi Phifer does offer, where you really get to see he's taking the time to showcase that he's not a bad guy. He's not some guy with some ulterior motives, where some lingering issue is basically holding him back, and that it's affecting his family as well too. And in turn, Duffy, played by Frank Grillo, that's not the case here at all. And I'm actually really appreciative that there's no outstanding issues outside of him trying to help his this new friend that he's made along the way, and then also his family as well too. So it's definitely one of those things where I appreciate that what you see is what you get, and there's no additional baggage along the way as well too. And I think Mekhi Phifer does a really good job in showcasing that he really does care for Duffy, and at the same time appreciates the friendship they develop along the way, especially through all the turmoil they're going through. It's a very well-earned friendship, and you can see that they really do have a lot of respect for each other, and they do care for each other in the process as well too. So I did appreciate that coming from Mekhi Phifer. Now, in Frank Grillo, Frank Grillo is one of those guys that, as I mentioned before, he's one of those actors that when I really became aware of it, it really was the movie The Gray, where I think that he really does showcase like what he can truly pull off here at a really high emotional level, if that makes any sense. In this particular film, though, there are moments where you get to see the reluctancy that he has with wanting to be involved with this fighting game, but then again with the encouragement of Max, played by Mekhi Phifer, you get to see that he's picking up on this guy may not seem as bad as it may not look as bad as he seems based on the scenario that they were in, and then slowly is starting to trust the guy and showing that, okay, I can see that he's basically looking out for me, but I know that he's also got some debt along the way too that he discovers here. So, and then in turn, when you get to find out that there's another fight that comes up at the last minute, and the promoter of the fight, played by Dermot Maloney, you get to see that he's understanding of the situation that Max is in, but it's a situation that all he has to do is cover a debt. If he can take care of that, then he will do that extra step to try to help his friend out in the process, even though they just happened to meet literally like 2 nights ago. And I always thought that was something that was very interesting about that character, but the way that it was handled, in my opinion, throughout the story really made a lot of sense, because these two actors portrayed those respective characters effectively, in my opinion, and making it very believable for me as an audience member to be invested with the overall story. Now, as far as the directing is concerned with this movie, I will say that Christian Sesma, I think this is probably his best directed film that I've come across here so far. And truthfully, I've only seen 2 movies here that he's done. The first one, which was Section 8, which is a film I really did enjoy. But watching this movie, I felt like he's gotten a lot better in telling an effective story with these characters, because there's a lot that's going on with this movie, and it moves rather quickly. But somehow I still feel like he did a really good job in pacing out the emotional beats where it's effective the most, where you really can be invested with what's going on here, especially with the characters when they're having these, absurd things going on around them, which in a lot of ways can be kind of cheesy if it's not handled correctly. And I think he did a really good job in handling the emotions when it's absolutely necessary, and become the heart of the story at the end of the day. And then with the action set pieces, they are the focus, no doubt, but it's definitely secondary for me. Like, I think he's really good at just telling an effective story, and then the action set piece is just the icing on the cake here. So I think that's something he's done really good with this film. I think he did a lot better than Section 8. Not to say that in Section 8 he didn't do a good job. I think he did a great job. But watching that movie and then watching this film, I feel he's gotten better as a director, seeing what I've come across here so far. Now, the other thing I really want to highlight here has to do with Chad Law and Gary Charles. Now, I mentioned before that they both have worked in a film ticket called The Get Back, which is a film I really do recommend you all check out, especially if you really just love old school like buddy action films. Like, that movie does offer that in space, I meant to say. I really love what they've done together with that story, and I was really curious to see if they would still carry that same momentum along the way, and I love what they've done with this movie. Both of these screenwriters here are phenomenal way of understanding the genre, because being both fans of the genre, especially Chad Law, where they understand what works, what doesn't work, and whether they have a very limited budget or a bigger budget, whatever the case may be, they understand what they can pull off here within those confines of the budget, and at the same time being able to tell a story that not only is going to be entertaining, but will also have a lot of heart and a lot of emotional attachment to it as well too, so that me as an audience member, and I'm hoping everyone else as well too, when they watch the film and get to the very end of it, they walk away being satisfied and being told a great entertaining story at the end of the day, and also want to go back and revisit the story because you love the characters so much. And I think that's what they've done a really good job with, in writing great characters. Even though we've seen these type of characters before with these action set pieces before and these beats before, all that still is very prevalent throughout this narrative here, but I still felt a connection with the characters, and I think they've done a really good job in writing and structuring a great story at the end of the day. So I want to give them props for that, because I think they're incredible at what they do here. Now, one thing I do want to finish up here with my review, as far as the positive concern, it has to do with the action set pieces. Now, I am a stickler for good action set pieces, but at the same time, as time has gone by, I've also become aware of the limitations when it comes to films that have a short schedule, limited budget, and just not a lot of resources that's available to them. And a lot of times these guys have to do the very best they can in a short span of time. And then I'm hoping that they always get the pieces that they need to make it a great film, but also a great action film at that as well too. And I really did enjoy the action set pieces of this movie. I'll be honest, they're not the best I've ever seen, but I really did enjoy with what we got, because for me, at the end of the day, I really do remember the most about this film is the story and the characters. The action set pieces are secondary to me. They actually didn't. They weren't the things I was looking forward to as much as the story progresses along the way. Because even though I was excited for the action scenes, but as it progressed for me, the story got better for me to the point where I had almost forgot about the action until the next set piece came through, if that makes any sense. So that to me shows me that the stories that we're following here is the most important thing, and then the action set pieces are just, like I said before, the icing on the cake. And I did enjoy it. I thought they were fun. I had a great time with them. And I also want to point out too, before I forget, is has to do with the fact that we get to see a lot of MMA veteran fighters make an appearance in this movie. Donald Cerrone, who is an MMA fighter from back in the day, is someone that I really do enjoy as an actor, because he actually did a movie last year that came out called 3 Days in Malay, that's directed by Louis Manlow, was also written by Brendan Slagle. I really did like the movie, but I really enjoyed his performance in that movie. Like, he really is someone to me that is showing that he's becoming better as an actor. And when you watch that movie, 3 Days in Malay, you get to really see what he can really pull off as an actor, really getting to the nitty gritty of like pulling out the emotions and really selling it effectively at the end of the day. And although he's not the same type of guy in that movie as he is in this movie, but to me, I really believe that he understood what he was playing and finding a way for you to really believe what he's going to pull off here at the end of the day. And I think that he's done an effective job at that. So for me, I feel like he's getting better as an actor. The fight sequences, to me, it's second nature to him, where I think he just knows how to go about it, especially now the way how fight scenes in the movies are obviously no different, are different from fighting in real life. He's obviously very understanding of that as well too, and is able to translate effectively when it comes to the types of fighting, I'm going to say, that occur in these movies that really do showcase what the more as kind of like an authentic approach to the fighting scenes that are taking place in the films that he's worked on here. Now, I also appreciate the fact too that we get to see a lot of other familiar faces here in terms of the MMA world, in Cub Swanson and also Jay Haran as well too. So I really do appreciate when you get a film of this caliber, where you have guys who are fan of the genre and they're bringing people with authentic fighting background to utilize their skills on film to have a sense of authenticity as far as how the fighting scenes are being worked out, and just having a good time with it as well too. And then be able to see some of these fighters becoming more or less actors, like Donald Cerrone along the way, where you really get to see what they can pull off here outside of the outside of the fighting game, if you will. So I did appreciate that as well too. And then to close off my positives here is with Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins, everyone knows, if you watch my reviews here on the channel, I think Scott Adkins is one of the best to ever done it when it comes to the action genre. He's no doubt top 3 of all time, in my opinion. All right, Stallone's up top for me, Schwarzenegger's up top for me as well too, and then Scott Adkins. Like those guys for me are like the cream of the crop. But Scott Adkins is a very unique one for me personally, because not to say that Schwarzenegger or Stallone aren't good actors, they definitely are, but for me, Scott Adkins is one of those guys that can do the most craziest fight sequences, but still be a really good actor in the process. And that's not an easy thing to pull off here at all. So he's someone that you can tell has worked very hard on his acting, because what occurs in this movie for me is something that I won't reveal here, but I will say that what happens what happens to the story involving him really does pay off for me at the end of the day. Like, I really did feel everything that the characters were going through in And even though he's not in the film for that much, but his involvement in the film does make sense, and that it's not a wasted opportunity. It's not a wasted character. It's an effective use of a character, and using Scott Adkins in this capacity, clearly they're understanding that we cannot waste this man's time. We got to give him something worth his while, and it definitely does pay off for me at the end, where you get to see that not only was his acting put in good use, but the action sequence with him involved in it also was a very worthy opportunity for him to be a part of as well too. And I'm fascinated with how the story that we're following here, it just keeps getting better as the story progresses along the way. But I also did appreciate the fact that none of the actors here in this movie were wasted at all by any means, and I really did appreciate it as well too. So I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I'm hoping you guys go out of your way to check out this film, because it really is worth your while, especially if you're big fans of the action genre. But like any other film, though, there are some negatives that I have about this movie. Yes, so I will get into my negatives now here. So now let's get into that. One of the major negatives that I had with the movie really has to do with the villain. Now, before I go any further with that, I do want to preface that Jamie King, who plays the main villain in this movie, she was great. So there's nothing wrong with her acting, nothing wrong with her character. In fact, there was a lot that I wanted from that character now, and I'll explain in a bit here. But the thing that I had a problem with the movie was the fact that the villains in this film, although we know who the good guys and the bad guys are, which I appreciate the fact that the good guys, we know what their motivations are. The bad guys, we also know what their motivations are. And there's no additional ulterior motives on top of that. It's just, what you see is what you get. But when I was watching her character, there was something about her character that I really did appreciate. And I always felt like there's a lot more to her story. And we do get some exposition, but there's a lot more to her story that I felt like could have been offered. Now, I believe, because due to the fact that this film was shot in a really tight schedule, that they had to work out what should we focus on more. And in this case, we had to focus more on the heroes. We have to get more of their story. We have to get more of their purpose, if you will. Whereas the bad guys, in some ways, their development kind of took secondary, and there really isn't a lot of development when it comes to these characters, which is a shame, because, like I said before, I think that Jamie King's character really had so much to offer that I would have liked to spend more time with her and really get more out of the character, because I felt like there was, to me, I kind of pictured in my head where she probably wasn't a bad cop to begin with here. She probably was a good person when she started in the police force, and then somewhere along the way, something happened where all that changed for her, and I would have liked to see what that would have been. Whether she was like that before she became a cop, or when she became more or less a bad guy as she became a cop. So I always felt like there's something more to offer with her character that was really missing with this movie, because when a character met her demise, I was happy with it. I was actually content that she got what she deserved, but it was kind of lackluster for me at the end of the day, because I felt like there was a lot more that could have been dealt with here with her character, to really add on the emphasis of like what she had gone through to get to this point. It's kind of a sad story. That's kind of how I always pictured it for me personally. But that doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the film. In fact, like after everything was said and done, I still liked what I saw. I still enjoyed the character, but I would have preferred a lot more time in that sense to really kind of get a feel for their journey, because I always felt like that was something very important to tell, because there's always a story to every side here, and I would have liked to learn more about her, other than the fact that she's a corrupt cop who didn't care who she hurt along the way. So that's really the only thing that sticks out for me as the negatives, and everything else, as far as I'm concerned, with any negatives that I would have had here, they were so minor that honestly don't really feel a need to get into that here, because I'm sure some people will say that if they watch the movie that we've seen these stories before, this is nothing new, nothing really interesting in terms of like a great story is concerned. I don't personally care if that's the case for some people, because I walked away enjoying the film. I really do love this movie. And in fact, I actually reached out to both Chad and Garry, letting them know how much I really love this film, because this movie was so much fun for me personally that I would love to go back and visit this film on a frequent basis, because I really thought this was a fun, enjoyable action flick that had a lot of heart, a great story, great characters with great writers, a great director, great actors, and just overall a great film at the end of the day, at least for me personally here. So for me, that's gonna be into my negatives. Now let's get into my rating. I'm just really happy to see guys like Gary Charles, Chad Law, Christian Sesma, Scott Adkins, Frank Grillo, Mekhi Phifer now as well too. But mainly the guys who have grown up watching this stuff, like the action films, the action genres the action films that I grew up watching, with films from the 80s and the 90s. And to me, the fact that Chad Law, Garry Charles are now more busy with the upcoming work they have coming down the pipeline here. I'm going to reveal something here too. I've been trying to get a hold of Chad Law to be on my show for quite some time, but because of his busy schedule here, we're working out eventually sometime to be able to pull this off here, and I cannot wait for that conversation to take place down the line. But I'm happy to see that he's really busy, that unfortunately didn't have time to speak with me, given his busy schedule. I'm like, that's great. You're doing what you're doing, and that means there's projects coming down the line that I'm going to be very excited for, that you're a part of here, because I know you're good at what you're doing here. So I'm like, this is a great thing. Like, I have no issues at all whatsoever, and I'm very excited to see these guys who are making these type of films for fans like myself, and they are actually great. And I also think too that, I'm hoping that in time that they are going to get bigger opportunities. And I'm not talking about like when the films are successful that they deserve to be superstar. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. I really don't. I care about opportunities. I really care about them getting the next opportunity to work on something bigger, something better, and having the time that they need to work all the details that they probably didn't have the time before, and pulling off with Section 8, Lights Out, or The Get Back as an example. Even though I love those movies, but imagine if they had more time, more money, more resources, what they could do at such a high level, even though I think they are working at a high level in terms of storytelling and various other things that they're doing as well too. But just think about what they can pull off here with a short schedule, small budget, but just amp it up more. I think they can do magic. I really do believe that here. So I, as a fan, am excited for what they are going to be working on here, and I'm always going to cheer for these guys, because these guys are making some incredible stuff out there that, for fans like myself, can always look forward to here. So for me, as far as the film Lights Out is concerned, I'm going to give this movie a solid cheers. And those are my thoughts on the film Lights Out. Now, as I said before, this movie came out last week on February 16th, so it is available right now for you guys to check out on VOD. You can check it out on Vudu. You can check it out on Amazon Prime. In fact, I have a link in the description down below for you guys to check out the film. It really is worth your while to go out of your way to check out this movie, especially if you're a fan of the action genre. And I hope you guys get a kick out of it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, if not more, because it really is worth your time if you're a really big fan of the genre here. So I hope you guys enjoy it here. But while you're doing so, if you have seen this movie, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that as well too, subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already, and also follow NRW on social media, on Instagram, New Release Wednesdays, on Facebook, Nerds Rule the World, and on Twitter at the NRW. And you can follow me on my social media, on Instagram, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, on Twitter, You're So Cool WRM, and on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And I want to thank you all for checking this review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until next time, stay safe out there, and cheers.